Every year, on the 15th of August, the Church celebrates the solemnity of the Assumption of our Blessed Virgin Mother Mary into heaven. It's also known as the Feast of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary. So then what is this feast day all about? Well, as you've noticed, this year in 2021, August the 15th falls on a Sunday. And so why is this feast day so important that it even takes over the normal Sunday Mass and Sunday readings? Friends, the Feast of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary is the belief that Mary's body and soul was taken up into heavenly glory, assumed into heavenly glory. And it's a great reminder for us about our end goal in this life, which is to get to heaven. Now, while this belief has always been around since the beginning of the church, even in the early church, Pope Pius XII on November 11, 1950, declared with papal infallibility that the doctrine of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary into heavenly glory is to be held as a doctrine in the church. All the details which led to this proclamation is found in the document Munificentissimus Deus. Now, the summary of this doctrine, which was written in the document, is as follows. By the authority of our Lord Jesus Christ, of the blessed apostles Peter and Paul, and by our own authority, we pronounce, declare, and define it to be a divinely revealed dogma, that the Immaculate Mother of God, the ever Virgin Mary, having completed the course of her earthly life, was assumed body and soul into heavenly glory. In particular, Pope Pius XII made a reference to the book of Genesis 3:15, a reference to the teaching in terms of Mary's victory over sin and death through her intimate association with the new Adam, that is Christ, which is also reflected in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 54. The second reading we find for the Vigil Mass of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Here's what it states. And when this which is corruptible clothed itself with incorruptibility, and this which is mortal clothes itself with immortality, then the word that is written shall come about. Death is swallowed up in victory. And so the Feast of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary is a holy day of obligation in the Roman Catholic Church. Canon 1246, paragraph 2 of the 1983 Code of Canon Law defined the list of feasts that are also known as holy days of obligation. And you'll find information on this and more in another reflection that I've made. But here, the Code of Canon Law is the law of the church. And in it, there's all sorts of law on marriage, which many of us are familiar with, but in also sacraments, and even the holy days of obligations are in the code itself. And so then, what is the story behind the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary? Well, according to tradition, the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary is said to have taken place in Ephesus, in the house of the Virgin Mary. Now, if you go and visit Ephesus, you can see the place. It takes place in Ephesus as well. Many people ask why. And the reason is because tradition has it that on the cross, Jesus entrusted his mother to St. John, the evangelist. And after Jerusalem, the Apostle St. John took the Blessed Virgin Mary to Ephesus, which is in modern-day Turkey, where she spent the rest of her life before being taken up into heavenly glory. And again, you can go and visit this place. Now, another story was told where, according to one of the apostles, also known as St. Thomas. Now, I'm sure many of us are familiar with Thomas, right? We're talking about the same doubting Thomas. Well, he wasn't around when Jesus appeared to the disciples the first time around, as we recall, right? On the second Sunday of Easter, where you have the story of the doubting Thomas. Yes, this very same doubting Thomas, he was not present at the death of Mary. And so his late arrival then precipitates a reopening of Mary's tomb, which is found also to be empty. Now, there is actually a tradition too, much less well known, where St. Thomas also says, unless the Blessed Mother appear to him, he will not believe. But in any case, the story of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary became widespread across the Christian world, and it is St. John Damascene who wrote the following in one of his works, which is useful for us in deciphering the Assumption of our Blessed Mother into heaven. Here's what St. John Damascene says. St. Juvenal, Bishop of Jerusalem at the Council of Chalcedon, made known to the Emperor Marcion and Pulcheria, who wished to possess the body of the Mother of God, that Mary died in the presence of all the apostles, but that her tomb, when opened upon the request of St. Thomas, was found empty, wherefrom the apostles concluded that the body was taken up to heaven. Now, again, in 1950, Pope Pius XII defined it as dogma for the Catholic Church. And in Pius XII's dogmatic statement, the phrase, having completed the course of her earthly life, leaves open the question of whether the Virgin Mary died before her Assumption or not. You see, Mary's Assumption to heaven is said to have been a divine gift to her in her role as the Mother of God. And so again, in the document Munificentissimus Deus, at one point, Pope Pius XII writes, all these proofs and considerations of the Holy Fathers and the theologians with regards to the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary are based upon the sacred writings as their ultimate foundation. And again, the Pope cited 1 Corinthians 15. In this passage, Paul alludes to Genesis 3:15, in addition to the primary reference of Psalm 8, verse 6, where it is prophesied that the seed of the woman will crush Satan with his feet. Here's what it says. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. They will strike at your head, while you strike at their heel. Since then, Jesus ascended to heaven to fulfill this prophecy. And through his passion, death, and resurrection, and then ascension into heaven, it follows that this woman, Mary, would have the similar end, since she shared this enmity as well. And so Mary then too is assumed into heavenly glory. Now, the Pope also mentioned in paragraph 26, and also in Psalm 132, a psalm commemorating the return of the Ark of God to Jerusalem in lamenting its subsequent loss. The second half of the psalm says that the loss will be recompensed in the new covenant. And so it is hopefully prayed, arise, O Lord, into your resting place, you and the ark, which you have sanctified. That's verse 8. And so since the church sees this new covenant, this ark of the new covenant as in Mary, this ark in Mary, it understands that she was taken into heaven in a similar manner as the Lord, that is, body and soul, into heavenly glory. And so in the Latin Church, the Feast of the Assumption is celebrated on the 15th of August. And the Eastern Catholics celebrate the Dormition of the Mother of God, Dormition of the Theotokos, that is, the following asleep of the Mother of God, on the same date. Now, the Eastern Catholics believe that Mary died a natural death, that her soul was received by Christ upon death, and that her body was resurrected on the third day after her death, and that she was taken up into heavenly glory bodily in the same way that Christ's body was resurrected. Her tomb was found empty also on the third day. And so the Eastern Catholics use the term dormition, which means sleep. For them, the Blessed Virgin Mary went through a physical death, but her body, like the body of Jesus, was raised from the dead and taken into heaven. Her body as well as her soul. Now Mary passed beyond death and judgment. The resurrection of the body, which we profess in the Nicene Creed, has in the case of Mary been anticipated and is already an accomplished fact. And the rest of humanity will wait until this will happen as well in the future. And so hopefully what we've just reflected upon there is insightful and helps us to better understand this great feast day, the solemnity of the Blessed Virgin Mary assumed into heavenly glory. That's the feast day we celebrate on the 15th of August. May God bless you.